You know that feeling when you finish a conversation and immediately you get that sinking sense in your gut. Like, I just said way too much.
Oh, absolutely. You're definitely not alone in that. It's that feeling of having completely exhausted yourself trying to justify a simple decision.
Yeah, or giving way more background than anyone actually needed. It points right to what we're diving into today, this deep exhaustion that comes from constantly feeling like you need permission.
Or validation.
Right.
Just for your own choices, your own existence, really.
Exactly.
And look, it's more than just being a bit chatty. It's a profound kind of conversational fatigue. It acts like a real emotional drain.
How so?
Well, when you over-explain, you're giving away your personal power. You take something simple, assertive, like just saying no, and you turn it into this defensive argument.
Right, and then the other person feels like they have an invitation to pick apart your reasons.
Precisely. And the sources we looked at for this deep dive, they're crystal clear. This pattern, this over-explaining and constantly seeking validation, it's directly linked to an underlying lack of self-respect.
And fear, too, right.
And often, yes, a deep-seated fear. Fear of being judged, maybe rejected, or just fundamentally misunderstood.
That fear. It's like the invisible engine driving the whole behavior. So, okay, our mission today in this deep dive is to help guide you from that cycle of exhaustion into one of, well, quiet, confident self-trust. We're going to tackle this in 3 main steps.
Oh, sure.
First, we really need to understand why. Why does this reflex even exist? What are the psychological triggers that turn us into these chronic justifiers?
Got it. The roots.
Second, we're laying out a clear, practical, and really actionable blueprint for change. We'll focus first on the external stuff, things like setting boundaries that actually stick.
Right, the practical tool.
And third, we move inward. Because, let's face it, those external walls won't hold up if the internal foundation is shaky.
Absolutely essential. Can't build on sand.
So we'll dive into strategies for cultivating that wellspring of internal validation. We're going to break down where this compulsion to justify everything comes from, and then give concrete steps. That includes understanding the critical difference between needing external validation versus finding it internally.
And the practical steps, like you said, for setting and actually maintaining those necessary boundaries.
Okay, let's unpack this part first.
Yeah.
Because we absolutely need to get to the root causes before we just jump straight to the cure, right?
Makes sense. You need to know what you're dealing with.
This whole pattern, it often starts really early, like way back in how we learn to measure our own worth. We're talking about validation here, and it seems like it exists on this spectrum. And that spectrum kind of dictates how securely we move through the world.
That spectrum really is the foundation of our emotional stability, you could say. On one end, you've got external validation. That's the acknowledgement you get from outside yourself. Your strengths, achievements, even your feelings. Validated by friends, family, your boss, maybe even social media likes.
We all need some of that, surely.
Oh, absolutely. A healthy amount is necessary for well-being. It's part of being human, part of connection. We need to feel like we belong.
Go ahead, there's a but.
There's a but. The internal counterbalance, and this is the real goal for self-reliance, is internal validation.
Right.
This is your ability to honor, to acknowledge your own positive qualities, your strengths, your wins, your emotions.
Regardless of what anyone else thinks or says.
Exactly. Without needing that external stamp of approval. And when we lack that core internal trust, well, that's when we start spending massive, unnecessary energy trying to justify our right to simply take up space or make a choice.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It really is. And the origins of this imbalance. The research we looked at suggests it's profoundly rooted in childhood.
Okay.
The balance between relying on internal versus external validation often gets set before we even hit our teenage years.
Can you elaborate on that? Like, how do specific childhood environments kind of skew us towards seeking approval instead of building that self-trust? Because I think this is where listeners might start seeing their own history pop up.
Certainly. We generally see 2 main types of upbringing, almost opposites, that can lead to an adult needing excessive external validation.
Okay, what are they?
On one hand, if a child receives too little emotional validation, think about being consistently ignored, having feelings dismissed, maybe being told you're too sensitive or making a fuss about nothing. That kind of neglect can contribute to adult symptoms. Things like difficulty trusting people, high levels of anxiety, a constant fear of rejection.
Wow.
There was a 2016 study suggesting that getting emotional validation from mothers, specifically in childhood, helps build crucial emotional awareness later on. Without that early validation, the adult self struggles even to know if their own feelings are legitimate. They're always looking outwards for confirmation.
So the adult is constantly asking, is it okay for me to feel this way? Because the child version was never taught that their feelings were inherently valid.
Precisely. Now, consider the other extreme.
Okay.
Receiving excessive praise or overvaluation in childhood. This can be just as detrimental, just in a different way.
Really? How does that work? Isn't praise good?
Well, we're talking about overvaluation. Like, the child is constantly told they're special or perfect, even without putting in real effort. A 2015 study linked this kind of thing to developing narcissistic traits later. Things like a sense of entitlement, and as an adult, needing constant, almost performative external validation to keep up that inflated self-image.
So it sounds like whether you were ignored or maybe overly praised,
Yeah.
the end result is similar in one way. Your sense of self-worth becomes conditional. It depends on someone outside you.
Absolutely. It's tethered externally. And when this dependency becomes really overwhelming, it can even show up in clinical ways.
Like diagnosable conditions?
Yes. The DSM-5, which is the diagnostic manual professionals use, notes that needing excessive validation can be a symptom of certain conditions, like dependent personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder.
Wow.
It just shows how deeply rooted this need for approval can become if that internal compass never gets properly calibrated.
So, okay, let's bring it back to the everyday. When we see an adult constantly apologizing or giving way too many details about why they made a simple choice.
Yeah.
Like the classic example, right? Oh, I'm so sorry I can't make it tonight because, this thing at work piled up and I just didn't realize, and my dog's not feeling well, and my car's making a noise, so please don't be mad.
The laundry list.
That's not just someone being polite, is it? It's actually a defense mechanism.
It is entirely a survival strategy, especially for people who grew up fearing punishment or maybe maltreatment or even just strong disapproval if they were perceived as being in trouble.
Oh.
The core belief is something like, if I can just explain my way out of this situation, I won't suffer that negative consequence I'm anticipating. So the over-explaining itself is a defense mechanism, a stress response rooted in that primal fear of needing to justify yourself out of trouble.
We often hear about the typical trauma responses, fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
But over-explaining, it sounds like it fits more into that lesser-known one, the fawn response. Can you talk about why fawn is so maybe insidious in just everyday adult conversations, especially with this habit?
That's a really critical distinction to make. Fawn is a survival strategy where a person tries to appease, placate, or sort of submit to others to avoid harm or conflict.
Okay.
Unlike fight, which is confrontational, or flight, which is about escape, fawn actually engages directly, but it engages in a way that tries to neutralize the perceived threat.
So how does over-explaining fit?
Over-explaining is textbook fawning, because by providing all these exhaustive, sometimes almost desperate-sounding details, you're attempting to appear non-threatening. You want to seem compliant, logical, reasonable, exactly. And the hope is that this diffuses any possible conflict or judgment or anger before it even starts.
Wow. So the person over-explaining is basically operating under the subconscious assumption that they're perpetually guilty until proven innocent. And the explanation is their evidence in the trial.
That's a great way to put it, exactly. And this defense mechanism, it's fueled by hypervigilance.
Hypervigilance, explain that.
Individuals who experience trauma or even just really inconsistent validation often live in this constant state of alertness. They're scanning their environment nonstop for even tiny signs of disapproval.
Like what?
Oh, a slight shift in someone's tone of voice, a brief frown, maybe a pause that feels too long in a text message response.
The dreaded pause.
Right. This constant search for threat fuels the compulsive need to over-explain every little action. It's an attempt to manage those negative reactions they're anticipating, even if they aren't actually coming.
That sounds incredibly taxing, emotionally and physically.
It is, because you're constantly trying to prove your innocence or your worth in anticipation of a threat that might not even exist.
And all of this, it circles right back to that core issue we mentioned, a fundamental lack of internal self-respect.
Exactly. If you deeply respect your own needs, your own decisions, you just don't feel that compulsive need to argue their validity.
Yeah.
Low self-respect is like the drain pipe for our emotional energy. If you recognize these patterns in yourself, like feeling intense guilt about setting even a small boundary, or being an overachiever, specifically aiming for that public praise, constantly comparing yourself to others, finding it incredibly hard to make decisions alone.
Or maybe fabricating stories just to get sympathy.
Yes. All of these are huge signals that your validation meter is tilted way too far towards the external. When you lack self-respect, you rely on others to tell you you're okay. You automatically blame yourself when things go wrong. You focus only on your weaknesses.
Instead of your inherent value.
Precisely. And you struggle to even accept a compliment gracefully.
It really is the difference between being able to say, I'm not coming, and internally knowing that choice is valid, versus thinking, okay, I need to spell out why I'm saying no. I need to give reasons X, Y, and Z, and I really hope that's enough justification for you to still like me or approve of me.
That's it. That desperate need for justification is the quest for external approval.
Okay, so now that we've kind of unpacked the why behind it, let's move towards actionable change. We have to start building the external framework first.
Yes, the practical steps.
If the problem is letting other people dictate our worth through their judgment or their questioning, then the solution has to involve building clear walls, boundaries to protect that worth, protect our internal judgment.
Boundaries are absolutely non-negotiable for this. They define what you will and won't tolerate. It's about protecting yourself and really taking charge of your own life.
It's not about being difficult.
Not at all. Creating healthy limits allows us to guard our health, our well-being, and ultimately, it leads to feeling less overwhelmed, less resentful.
In relationships, does it push people away?
That's the common fear, but here's the unexpected bonus. Healthy boundaries don't push people away, not the right people anyway. They actually allow you to develop closer, more trusting relationships.
Wow.
Because those relationships then become built on mutual respect for each person's defined space rather than on obligation or guesswork.
Okay, so the source material we looked at breaks boundaries down into 3 really practical categories. Thinking about them structurally like this seems helpful, so you know exactly which area of your life needs fortifying.
Yes, defining them gives us clear targets. The 3 main types we need to focus on are physical, emotional, mental, and time boundaries.
Let's start with physical. What does that look like?
Physical boundaries relate to your personal space, your body, your belongings. This might mean establishing a personal policy like, I don't hug people I've just met, or deciding you only share food or personal items like your favorite coffee mug with people you really trust. It's about owning your physical self and the space around you.
Got it. Okay, second type.
Emotional mental boundaries. These set limits on discussion topics or protect your emotional energy.
Examples.
Okay, maybe setting limits on discussing really sensitive topics like body image or maybe politics or past trauma with casual acquaintances or colleagues.
Right, not everyone gets access to everything.
Exactly. And crucially, it also involves validating your own emotions by prioritizing your needs. This means consciously choosing not to take on another person's emotional baggage just because they decided to dump it on you.
That's a big one. Okay, and the third.
Time boundaries. These are limits on the amount of time you dedicate to specific people, activities, or events.
Like?
This could be reserving a set time block every day for self-care, say 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. is your non-negotiable reading time, or having a specific bedtime you stick to, or setting firm working hours, especially if you work from home.
Time boundaries feel like maybe the easiest ones to let slide.
They often are, which makes them incredibly powerful to reclaim.
Okay, so these aren't just abstract concepts, they're actionable rules we can set.
Yeah.
Let's walk through the 4-step guide for actually implementing them. This needs to be super concrete for anyone listening because, the theory is one thing.
But putting it into practice is where the challenge lies.
Right.
Step 1 is develop reflect.
Okay, introspection.
Yes. This is where you identify where you feel most drained or maybe resentful. And importantly, start small. Ask yourself questions like, what habits or supports make me feel my best?
Give me an example prompt.
Okay, try filling this in. I feel most successful when, maybe the answer is, when I don't check work email before 9 a.m.
Right.
So the boundary you develop from that reflection is clear. I will put my phone on do not disturb or ignore work emails until my workday officially starts. This reflection step solidifies your why. It makes the boundary feel self-directed, not just reactive.
That seems critical. The boundary has to serve you, not just be a reaction to someone else.
Okay, step 2, have a conversation.
Once you're clear on your boundary, you need to communicate it. This is where a lot of people might panic and immediately start over-explaining.
And this is exactly where we prevent that panic spiral. Remember to use I statements.
I statements.
Because they express your feelings and your needs without blaming the other person. For instance, instead of saying, "You make me feel awful when you talk about my diet."
Which sounds accusatory.
Right. You state the emotional boundary clearly. "I care about you, but actually, I don't feel comfortable discussing my diet. It's a sensitive topic for me."
Okay, more examples.
For a physical boundary, "I actually don't hug people I just met. I'm more comfortable with a handshake." For time, "I can't commit to that specific time because that hour is already reserved for my self-care and downtime." The key is communication that's firm but not aggressive.
And crucially, doesn't invite negotiation.
Exactly. It's a statement, not an opening bid.
Huge distinction. Okay, moving on to step 3. Implement and plan exceptions. This sounds really important because life isn't perfectly predictable, is it?
Not at all. Curveballs happen. You can't plan for every single situation, so you need to think about your limits and what potential reasonable exceptions might look like in advance.
Why plan exceptions? Doesn't that weaken the boundary?
Not if done consciously. Planning exceptions is actually essential for sustainability. Let's say your boundary is dedicated exercise time. You might plan, "I will dedicate 30 minutes every single day to exercise. However, if I'm traveling or genuinely sick, my commitment will be to do a 5-minute stretching routine instead."
Okay, so it's like a pre-planned contingency.
Exactly. Planning for potential failure isn't defeat, it's realistic. It helps you keep the boundary going without making it feel so rigid and impossible that you just abandon it entirely the first time you can't meet it perfectly.
You're acknowledging your humanity while still upholding the core commitment.
Precisely.
Okay, and finally, the big one. Step 4, sustain. This is where the practice hopefully turns into permanence, but it's probably also where many boundaries crumble under pressure or guilt.
It is. To sustain boundaries, you absolutely must remain firm and constantly remember your why. Why did you set this boundary in the first place?
Right.
It will take time for people around you to adjust, especially if they benefited from your previous lack of boundaries. They might test you. They'll need persistent, calm reminders.
So stay true to your needs.
Yes. And crucially, if you miss a boundary, if you let someone push past it one time, do not beat yourself up. Don't declare the whole boundary a failure.
What do you do instead?
Just acknowledge it happened, maybe reflect quickly on why, and then commit to trying again the very next time the situation arises. For example, okay, I didn't feel confident telling that person I don't discuss politics, and I felt kind of uneasy afterward. Note to self, I'll try again next time, because protecting my peace is more important than their temporary comfort.
Be kind to yourself in the process.
Be kind. Celebrate the small wins, but remain firm on the intention.
That recovery process feels vital because when you're communicating these boundaries, especially those first few times, the delivery is just everything, isn't it?
Absolutely. You need to be assertive.
Define assertive in this context.
Assertive means clearly and confidently communicating your limits. Not aggressive, not passive. And like we said, using those I statements helps expressing your feelings and needs without putting the other person on the defensive.
Okay.
And here's a key piece of advice for the listener. Prepare to be challenged.
Oof. Yeah.
People who are used to you having fewer boundaries will likely test them. They might whine or try to negotiate or maybe even try to guilt trip you.
So what's the strategy then?
The tip here is stay firm. Calmly reiterate your needs. Resist the urge to get pulled into an argument or to start explaining your motives all over again. Your response should just be a simple repetition of your boundary, not a defense of it. And this leads us right into the core of stopping that over-explaining habit itself. The philosophy here is incredibly simple, but also really powerful. It requires a definite mindset shift.
Okay, what is it?
No is a complete sentence.
Simple, but hard to live by sometimes.
It is. Because explanations, justifications, apologies, they automatically turn your boundaries into negotiations. You don't owe detailed reasons to people who consistently push back or disregard your needs. Clarity is always stronger than justification.
That feels like the real shift we need to make internally.
Yeah.
Recognizing that if someone is basically listening for leverage, giving them more data, more explanation, just gives them more ammunition to argue with, or more angles to try and exploit for sympathy.
Absolutely. And this is where we introduce a really useful framework called the JGE method. But it's about what not to do.
Okay, JGE, what does it stand for?
You need to actively avoid doing these 4 things when you're standing firm on a decision. Do not justify, argue, defend, or explain.
Justify, argue, defend, explain. JGGE.
Got it. If you engage in any of those, you're signaling uncertainty. You're essentially inviting pushback.
Break those down a bit. Justify.
Justifying means giving a reason that the other person can then debate or pick apart. Arguing means you're engaging in a negotiation about your choice. You're treating it like it's up for discussion.
Defend.
Defending implies your choice is somehow wrong or needs legal scrutiny. You're acting like you're on trial.
Explain.
Explaining often comes across as apologizing for making a perfectly valid choice that serves your needs.
Wow. The impulse to JD feels so strong, though, especially if you have that history of fawning or that hypervigilance we talked about.
It's incredibly strong. It's often an automatic response.
So what's the emotional price we pay, like, right after we deliver that clear, unexplained no? How do we manage that discomfort, that urge to immediately backtrack and explain?
The immediate price is usually anxiety, maybe guilt. You might feel physically uncomfortable because you are literally short-circuiting a deeply ingrained survival mechanism.
Okay, so what do we do with that discomfort?
You have to realize that the discomfort is actually a sign of success. It means you did it. You stood firm. The goal isn't to eliminate the discomfort immediately, but to tolerate it.
For how long?
Maybe just for 2 minutes, then maybe 5. Knowing that on the other side of that wave of discomfort is a profound feeling of self-respect and relief. If you resist the urge to JBE, you communicate non-verbally that your choice is final.
Okay, so we need to replace those rambling JDE-filled explanations with clear, short statements. Let's give the listener an expanded toolkit, some phrases they can literally practice saying out loud tonight.
Good idea. Practice these. Say them until they feel natural. They're direct, respectful, and importantly, they are complete. They shut down the debate while still retaining basic politeness.
Okay, maybe.
For invitations or commitments, you need to decline. I'm not available then, but thank you for the invitation. Full stop. No because.
Nice and clean.
For when plans need to change or something doesn't suit you, actually, that doesn't work for me right now. Keep it brief. No context needed unless you choose to get it later, on your terms.
Okay.
If a decision you've made is being questioned, I've made my decision. It's a closed statement. It signals finality. For repeated requests after you've already said no, and that's final. This one is firm. Use it when needed.
What if someone keeps pushing for details, asking why? Why?
You can say, I'd prefer not to get into the details right now, but I appreciate your understanding. This sets a clear mental boundary against invasive questioning.
I like that. It's polite but firm.
And if someone asks for a favor you genuinely cannot or do not want to do, I'm sorry I can't do that, but I hope you find someone who can. It's helpful without being self-sacrificing.
Those are great. They stop the conversation dead in its tracks without necessarily being abrasive. But what happens when people are just relentless?
Ah, yes, the boundary pushers.
Yeah, when they run that circular conversation 5 times or more, asking why again and again, or trying to guilt you, saying things like, but you always say no, or but I really need you.
You absolutely need techniques ready for this. Otherwise, you'll just default back to Jade out of sheer exhaustion.
So what works?
One effective method is simple repetition. It's often called the broken record technique.
How does that work?
You just repeat your clear boundary statement word for word using the same calm, neutral tone. Every single time they push. If they ask, but why can't you come? You respond, that doesn't work for me. If they then say, but is it because of the dog? Just tell me.
Yeah.
You respond again calmly, that doesn't work for me.
Doesn't that sound robotic?
It can feel like it, but the lack of new information is incredibly frustrating for the person trying to argue. It forces them to confront the firmness of your decision because you're giving them nothing new to latch onto.
Okay, broken record. What if they still insist? This is where things can get emotionally charged, right?
Yes. And if they persist beyond that, you may need to escalate slightly with a decisive power move. You have the absolute right to end the conversation.
Wow.
You can deliver the decisive line. Something like, look, me saying no isn't the start of a debate here. It's actually the end of the conversation regarding this specific matter.
Wow, that's direct.
It needs to be sometimes. And if they still persist after that, the ultimate power move is to end the conversation physically or verbally.
Meaning?
That could mean literally walking away. It could mean saying clearly, I need to hang up the phone now. Or even just going silent and refusing to engage further in that specific topic.
What if they get annoyed? Or say you're being rude?
The sources are clear on this. People tend to stop badgering you when they learn, through experience, that you won't tolerate being badgered. If they act annoyed or accuse you of being wrong for setting a boundary, you have to let them feel their feelings. Your self-respect and peace are more important than managing their temporary discomfort with your no.
That takes courage.
It does,
Yeah.
but it gets easier with practice.
So all this external work, the boundary setting, the firm no, it's vital. But as we said earlier, the internal repair is really the engine of lasting change, isn't it?
Absolutely. Can't be overstated. We need to consciously shift our focus from that desperate search for external approval to actively, intentionally giving ourselves that validation internally.
To even start doing that.
We need to replace that excessive validation-seeking behavior with robust, restorative, self-soothing methods. Things that calm the nervous system and build inner resourcefulness.
Like what?
Well, for example, incorporating practices like mindfulness meditation or even yoga has been shown to be incredibly effective.
Why?
Why? Because they directly target that hypervigilance response we talked about.
There's science behind this.
Yes, there was a notable study back in 2011 that found just 8 weeks of consistent mindfulness practice could actually physically change the brain. It increased gray matter in areas linked to emotional regulation and decision-making.
Wow. So it literally builds the brain structures needed for this.
It seems to help build the self-control needed to set boundaries calmly and make decisions that align with your authentic self without constantly needing that external... Okay,
so mindfulness helps regulate. What about that inner voice, the one that used to demand justification? How do we retrain that?
That's where things like positive affirmations come in. But crucially, not just generic, fluffy ones.
Right.
You need to tailor them to your specific needs. Focus on validating the parts of yourself that were maybe ignored or criticized in the past.
Give me an example.
Sure. If you struggle with having confidence in making decisions alone, a tailored affirmation might be, I trust my intuition and my decisions are valid for me. If you struggle with feeling worthy, maybe use, I am enough right now, and my worth is inherent. It's not earned through performance or pleasing others.
So they act like counter-narratives.
Exactly. They're actively rewriting that old survival programming.
And to really heal, it sounds like we have to look back a bit, understand the origin of that pain. How do we approach that inner child part that was maybe told their feelings didn't matter without getting stuck there?
It's a delicate balance. The final practical steps involve this kind of inner healing and self-nurturing. Start by gently examining those childhood experiences of invalidation. Ask yourself those tough questions. Did I often feel invisible growing up? Was healthy attention or praise scarce? Then, as the wise, capable adult you are today, you actively provide that nurturing yourself in the ways you might have missed out on.
Like how?
It might sound simple, but regularly look in the mirror and tell yourself out loud that you're proud of yourself, that you believe in yourself. You essentially become the reliable, validating caregiver that might have been absent or inconsistent in your past.
Reparenting yourself in a way.
In a sense, yes. Additionally, build practical confidence by practicing saying no. Start really small with low-stakes requests.
Why?
Refuse to go see that movie you genuinely don't want to see. Decline doing the extra coffee run at work if it doesn't suit you. Each small no gradually builds your tolerance for the discomfort of potentially disappointing someone.
Lowering the stakes builds the muscle.
Precisely. And finally, protect all this hard-won progress by curating your social network. Meaning consciously detach from invalidating people. This requires some hard, honest self-assessment.
What should you ask yourself?
Ask, is this person I keep seeking validation from actually safe? Are they emotionally nourishing or are they depleting? Have they habitually violated my boundaries in the past, even small ones?
And if the answer is yes, they're not safe or they're depleting.
Then you choose self-care instead of seeking their approval. Turn to a genuinely supportive friend or a therapist, or just spend that energy on yourself. Seeking validation from an emotionally bankrupt source just sets you up for more pain and reinforces the very toxic pattern you're trying so hard to break. So this whole journey, right, from constantly seeking external validation to being able to stand firm in your no, it requires a really profound shift in perspective. And the sources we reviewed offer a wonderful kind of two-part therapeutic tool to help facilitate this shift. It's a strategy known as me, not me.
Me? Not me. Okay, that sounds intriguing. Like a way to get some immediate distance from anxiety. How does it work?
Me, not me, is basically a cognitive strategy. It borrows ideas from frameworks like cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and mindfulness, and it's designed specifically to help you step outside of yourself for a moment and observe a situation without immediately getting sucked into an emotional reaction.
Okay, give me an example. A common situation.
Right. Let's say you send an email to a colleague, and they reply with a really abrupt, maybe one-sentence answer that just feels cold.
Okay, yeah, been there.
Immediately, your old fawn response might trigger. That voice says, oh no, they hate me. What did I do wrong? I need to apologize right now and explain my last email better.
That's the classic anxiety spiral, isn't it? Turning neutral or ambiguous data into a personal rejection.
Exactly. So this is where you consciously implement step 1 of the tool. Step into not me.
Not me?
Yeah.
What does that involve?
You deliberately reframe your interpretation by considering the other person's possible context. The not me perspective asks questions like, maybe they were literally running late for a huge meeting. Maybe their boss just gave them some really bad news. Maybe they're just not great at email tone.
Or maybe they're stressed about something totally unrelated, like rehearsing for a presentation.
Precisely. Could be anything. This consciously removes your immediate feeling of personal responsibility for their potentially abrupt reaction. It introduces alternative, non-personal explanations.
That sounds like it could immediately lower the panic level. Okay, so you do need more first. Then what?
Then you gently check in with me.
Yeah.
Step 2.
Check in with me.
Yes. You acknowledge how your own history, your own stories, fears, maybe your ego are impacting how you're seeing the situation. Ask yourself, am I immediately defaulting to that part of me that feels it needs to be like to feel okay? Is that hypervigilant part of my brain the one always trying to keep me safe from rejection? Taking the driver's seat right now, me, not me, gives you a crucial moment of choice.
A choice between what?
A choice between feeling automatically rejected and spiraling into justifying yourself, or leaning into an empathic possibility about the other person, the not me part, that removes you from the center of their reaction. It allows you to stay anchored in your own reality, not theirs.
Okay, that's powerful. Me, not me. But you said there was something else, the ultimate leap.
Yes. The truly crucial leap, the ultimate act of internal self-acceptance and validation, comes next. The source material calls this me, now me. This is really the culmination of all the boundary work, the inner healing, everything we've discussed.
Me, now me. Explain that one.
Me, now me is the profound recognition that the current, wiser, more experienced version of you, the you listening right now, is fully capable of providing the safety, the unconditional acceptance, and the validation that past versions of yourself were desperately seeking.
You mean like your 9-year-old self who felt ignored, or your 20-year-old self who struggled so hard to say no?
Exactly those parts. It's about harnessing the wisdom, the resilience, the emotional experience of who you are now to consciously nurture those past selves who felt unheard or unseen or not good enough.
Wow. Okay, talk about that moment of transformation.
Yeah.
So instead of being perpetually stuck, seeing the world through the eyes of, say, our anxious 11-year-old self who's always asking, am I okay? Am I enough? We consciously use our current resources, our education, maybe our professional success, our life experience, our empathy to provide that approval internally.
That is the profound shift. It's the moment the adult self, the professional self, the self who has navigated challenges and learned things, realizes she's a much fuller, stronger version than before.
A version capable of compassion.
Yes. Capable of empathy and compassion, and most importantly, capable of directing those things inward towards herself. You genuinely no longer need that constant external approval in the same desperate way because the current wise you is more than capable of giving validation and acceptance to all those past versions of you who felt they had to earn love or safety through performance or persuasion or endless explanation.
You become your own secure base.
You become your own source of security. That's it exactly.
The internal rewards of consistently stepping out of that need to explain yourself. They sound really profound. This isn't just about feeling less stressed, is it? It sounds more like an identity shift.
It absolutely is an identity shift. When you stop compulsively justifying your choices, you reclaim significant, almost quantifiable emotional energy. Energy that was previously wasted on rehearsing arguments, defending yourself, or recovering from perceived conflict.
What happens with that reclaimed energy?
It translates into better focus, genuinely reduced anxiety, a feeling of being more centered and grounded. You become more rooted in your actual core values and less emotionally reactive to other people's discomfort or opinions.
And relationships must change too.
Dramatically. You start attracting and cultivating relationships built on mutual respect and genuine authenticity, not on your ability to perform or comply. You begin to heal that foundational, often subconscious belief that love and acceptance must be earned through constant persuasion or exhaustive explanation.
The huge realization being, my worth was never actually conditional on my ability to be agreeable or persuasive in the first place.
Never. The confidence that blooms from that deep self-trust doesn't need a footnote or an appendix explaining itself. It simply exists because you finally trust the person making the choice, which is you. Hashtag tidy size outro.
Wow. We have covered a massive amount of ground in this deep dive today.
Yeah.
We went all the way from understanding those deep psychological roots of validation seeking and that trauma response of over-explaining to implementing practical external boundaries, practicing the subtle but really firm art of the unexplained no, and finally cultivating that powerful internal resource of me, now me.
It's been quite a journey. Remember those key takeaways you can start implementing, like right now? Utilize those 4 steps for setting boundaries. Develop, reflect, converse, implement, and sustain.
And be kind to yourself when you slip up.
Absolutely.
Right.
Practice recovering quickly. Embrace the philosophy that no is a complete sentence. Actively avoiding that JD trap. Justify, argue, defend, explain.
Yeah.
And maybe most powerfully, start experimenting with that me, now me tool. Use the wisdom and compassion of your current self to validate and soothe those past parts of you.
It really is a journey, isn't it? Unlearning years, maybe decades of survival strategies. But it feels like every single time you choose that internal stillness over launching into an over-explanation, you're showing up for yourself in a fundamentally new way. You're basically declaring, I am the expert on my own life.
Beautifully put. So perhaps here is a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider today.
Okay.
If you consciously stopped asking, what would others say? What would your mother say, your partner, your boss, society? What would they say about this choice? And if instead you started consistently asking, what would I say? What would the current, wise, experienced version of me say? What kind of different choices might you start making, maybe even as soon as today? It really is time to let your current, confident self take the lead.